Have you ever felt something was off in a relationship, even when everyone was polite and friendly? Those subtle signs, those little actions, might be hiding a dislike that the other person is concealing. But how do you recognize them when they're so fleeting? And how do you deal with it without letting your emotions take over? Let's explore how Stoic philosophy can help you identify these signs and respond with calm strength and clarity. Let's begin. 1. Avoidance of eye contact. There's a certain power in eye contact. It's the unspoken acknowledgement of someone's presence and feelings. But when someone consistently avoids your gaze, it often speaks louder than words. Why does this matter? Because avoiding eye contact is rarely just about shyness or discomfort. In the world of Stoicism, we know that unresolved inner conflict is often projected outward. When someone can't look you in the eye, it often reflects their own struggle to reconcile their feelings, not just about you, but about themselves. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, reminds us to observe things as they are, without judgment. When someone avoids your eyes, it may not be personal. It might be their way of hiding resentment, guilt, or even fear of confrontation. It's a subtle cue of emotions they've yet to express. I remember a time when a friend, whom I thought I could rely on, avoided eye contact as I shared a personal struggle. They nodded along, but their gaze never met mine. Later, I learned they were frustrated with me, feeling I was leaning too heavily on them. Their avoidance wasn't about not caring. It was a sign of emotions they hadn't voiced. So next time you notice someone avoiding your gaze, don't immediately take it personally. Pause, observe, and ask yourself, what's really happening here? Eye contact isn't just a simple act. It's a reflection of deeper emotions that we often hide. By recognizing this, you can respond with empathy, not defensiveness, and build stronger, more honest connections. 2. Passive-aggressive remarks. Not all signs of dislike are direct. Sometimes they're hidden beneath sarcasm, disguised as humor, or wrapped in what seems like a compliment, but feels more like a jab. Passive-aggressive remarks are common because they allow people to express frustration or resentment without directly confronting the issue. But why are they so powerful? The Stoics teach us to stay unprovoked, to observe behavior as external data without letting it disrupt our inner peace. A passive-aggressive comment often reveals more about the speaker than about you. It's a reflection of their internal conflict, not a true critique of your actions. Marcus Aurelius, a Stoic philosopher, taught us to focus on our own actions and ask, is what I am doing aligned with virtue? This means that when you hear a passive-aggressive remark, your best response is to observe and not react emotionally. I once worked with someone who frequently said things like, "Oh, must be nice to have so much free time to work on that project," with a forced smile. At first it seemed innocent enough, but I started to notice the subtle tension it created. Eventually I realized their words were reflecting frustration with their own workload, not with me personally. When you encounter passive-aggressive remarks, don't take them at face value. Instead of reacting defensively, recognize that these comments often have more to do with the speaker's emotions than yours. By taking a Stoic approach, you can respond with clarity and calm rather than getting caught up in the drama. In doing so, you not only protect your peace, but also grow stronger in your ability to handle difficult situations with grace. 3. Exclusion from decisions or plans. Imagine being in a group, whether it's at work or in a social setting, and suddenly you find yourself left out of key decisions or plans. It might seem like an oversight, but when this happens repeatedly, it often signals something deeper. The Stoic philosophy teaches us to focus only on what we can control, and in this case, that means how we respond to being excluded. Being excluded can sting, but it's important to recognize that it says more about the person doing the excluding than about your value. If it's intentional, it reflects their own values and how they view your place in the group, not your worth. The key is to not internalize it. Exclusion is often a reflection of their insecurities or perhaps their need to assert power, rather than a direct judgment of you. For instance, I've experienced times when important decisions were being made, but I was always the last to know, or even left out entirely. It left me feeling frustrated and confused until I realized that this wasn't about me. It was about the group dynamic, and the people involved weren't comfortable giving me a voice. By recognizing this, I could choose not to take it personally. When you feel excluded, the Stoic response is to take a step back and examine the situation with clarity. Don't react emotionally or let it undermine your confidence. Instead, focus on what you can control: your actions, your goals, and your value. Exclusion doesn't diminish your worth, and it's in how you carry yourself in these moments that truly reflects your strength. So, observe, reflect, and then move forward with a sense of calm and purpose. 4. Unwillingness to celebrate your success. Have you ever achieved something meaningful, only to be met with indifference or a half-hearted acknowledgement from someone you thought would be your biggest cheerleader? It can be a tough pill to swallow, especially when the person's reaction doesn't match the excitement you were hoping for. But sometimes this lack of celebration reveals more than just a passive reaction. It can stem from envy or an underlying sense of competition. The Stoic perspective encourages us to focus not on how others respond to our success, but on how we handle it ourselves. Marcus Aurelius reminds us to rejoice with others when they succeed, as this practice nurtures our own virtue. So when someone can't seem to share in your happiness, it's not necessarily a reflection of your achievements, but often a sign of their own internal struggle or dissatisfaction. I recall finishing a big project at work and expecting praise from a colleague, only to receive a brief "good for you" before they quickly shifted the conversation elsewhere. Later, I discovered that they were vying for the same opportunity and felt overshadowed. Their reaction had very little to do with my success and everything to do with their own insecurities. In these moments, Stoicism teaches us to stay grounded. Instead of getting upset or trying to prove our worth, we should focus on what we can control: how we view our accomplishments. The real reward lies in the satisfaction that comes from knowing you gave your best, not in the external recognition. When faced with someone who can't celebrate your wins, remember, their inability to share in your joy says more about them than it does about you. Stay true to your values and let their indifference be a reminder that your self-worth doesn't depend on others' reactions. 5. Overemphasis on your flaws. We all know someone who tends to focus a little too much on your mistakes, almost like they're looking for something to criticize. It might feel like they're trying to help you improve, but often this kind of constant criticism is more about their need to feel superior than it is about offering constructive feedback. The Stoics taught us that we can welcome feedback, but we should always discern its intent. When someone constantly magnifies your flaws, it's worth asking, is this critique fair, or is there something else going on here? It often reveals their own insecurities, or perhaps an unconscious desire to put themselves in a position of power. Epictetus reminds us that our worth isn't determined by others' judgments, but by our own actions and integrity. When faced with constant criticism, the Stoic approach is to reflect and ask yourself, is this truly helpful? Or is it just a reflection of their own frustration or need to feel better about themselves? I remember a time when a colleague kept pointing out small mistakes I made in a project. At first, I tried to take their feedback seriously, but over time, I realized they were exaggerating these flaws, making them seem like massive issues. What I eventually recognized was that their constant focus on my mistakes was their way of feeling better about themselves or trying to assert control over the situation. When you face this type of behavior, the key is not to internalize it. Instead of letting it affect your self-esteem, ask yourself if the critique is truly valuable, or if it's driven by something else. The Stoic response isn't to defend yourself or get angry, it's to remain calm, stay grounded in your self-worth, and continue doing your best. Your value is defined by your actions, not by someone else's need to point out every little flaw. 6. Limited communication. Have you ever noticed that someone who once communicated freely with you now answers in short, curt replies or avoids conversations altogether? This kind of limited communication can be subtle, but it's often a powerful signal that something is amiss. Silence or short responses can sometimes speak louder than words. The Stoic perspective teaches us to observe actions, not just words, because behavior often reveals more than what people say. In Stoicism, we're reminded to focus on what we can control and not let others' behavior disturb our inner peace. When someone distances themselves by cutting off communication, it's easy to take it personally. But it's important to remember that their actions are often driven by their own struggles or internal conflicts, not necessarily by anything you've done. I once experienced a situation where a friend, who had always been responsive, suddenly started responding to my messages with one-word answers. The change felt odd, and I wondered if I had said something wrong. But instead of reacting immediately, I took a step back and observed. After some time, the truth came out. They were going through a personal issue and simply didn't have the emotional energy to engage in conversations as before. The Stoic approach here is to pause and not jump to conclusions. Instead of assuming the worst, try to understand the situation with curiosity rather than judgment. People's behavior often reflects what they're dealing with internally, not always how they feel about you. By adopting this mindset, you protect your emotional peace and avoid unnecessary conflicts. In the end, remember that communication is a two-way street. While you can't control how others choose to interact, you can control how you respond. Practice understanding and detachment, and you'll find that many of these situations are less about you and more about what others are navigating in their own lives. 7. Contradictory behavior. One day, someone is warm and friendly, the next they're cold and distant. Their behavior shifts like a pendulum, leaving you wondering what's really going on. What should you trust? In Stoicism, we're taught to observe behavior over time rather than reacting to emotional swings. People's actions often reveal more than their words, and contradictory behavior is a clear sign of internal conflict. When someone's behavior fluctuates, it's a signal that they are dealing with something on a deeper level. It might not have anything to do with you directly, but more about what they are grappling with inside. They could be struggling with unresolved feelings, jealousy, or just a lack of emotional clarity. The Stoic approach is to observe these contradictions without judgment, understanding that everyone's actions are influenced by their internal state, which may not always be consistent. I've had experiences where a friend's mood would shift unpredictably. One minute, they were excited to hang out, and the next, they'd pull away without explanation. Initially, I would take it personally, wondering if I had done something wrong. But through a Stoic lens, I began to see that their behavior wasn't about me, it was about what they were going through in their own mind. Instead of reacting with frustration or confusion, the Stoic response is to stay centered and not get caught up in the emotional swings of others. When you encounter contradictory behavior, remember it's not your responsibility to fix their inner turmoil. Your power lies in how you choose to respond. Focus on maintaining your own peace of mind, and recognize that others' inconsistency often stems from their personal struggles, not necessarily from anything you've done. By adopting this perspective, you can navigate these unpredictable moments with calm and clarity, protecting your emotional well-being and staying grounded in your own values. The signs of hidden dislike can be subtle, but recognizing them helps you maintain emotional peace and strengthen your relationships. Remember, you can't control how others behave, but how you respond to these situations is entirely within your control. Stoic philosophy teaches us to live with calm, objectivity, and virtue, and this is what enables you to stay at peace with yourself, no matter the circumstances. If you found this video helpful, be sure to subscribe to the Stoic Beacon so you don't miss out on future content. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.